Just as in a previous generation we had an organized effort against the mob, we need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
So I asked Carol Rasco to find me somebody from our state who had been in one of our welfare reform programs and had gone to work. And she found Lily Harden, and Lily showed up at the program. And I was conducting this meeting, and I committed a mistake that they always tell lawyers never to do. Never ask a question you do not know the answer to. But she was doing so well talking about it, as you saw how well spoken she was today, and I said, Lily, what's the best thing about being off welfare? And she looked me straight in the eye and said, when my boy goes to school and they say, what does your mama do for a living? He can give an answer. I have never forgotten that. And
feminists had created a very simplistic narrative about black masculinity and black women. And here was the big thing about Patterson, which does in Rituals of Blood, he was saying black women are outpacing. This book came out in 1998. The first article that he produced came out around 1992, which was a prelude to the book. It was a long article where he was questioning this gender ideology. And he was saying, and I'm in college at the time, that professional class women, black women, were outpacing black men. In 1992, 1993, they were earning degrees. They were entering into corporate America. They were being employed. They were being incorporated.
And most important, over 1 million people have moved from welfare to work and stayed there since the day Bill Clinton took office. Now it's my pleasure to introduce one woman who has made this transition from dependence to dignity, from welfare to work. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Lily Harden.
This is President Bill Clinton signing his 1996 Welfare to Work legislation. He is flanked on his right by Lily Harden, one of his state success stories that he was looking to replicate nationally. However, just 2 years previous, he was signing a different legislation, this one for the quote-unquote super predators, one sponsored by later President Joe Biden. The notorious 1994 crime bill had this effect on incarceration rates. And you can guess the great number of those incarcerated were black men.
Do you regret your advocacy for the crime bill?
Well, look, I supported the crime bill. My husband has apologized. He was the president who actually signed it.
They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy.
I'm sorry for the consequences that were unintended and that have had a very unfortunate impact on people's lives. I've seen the results of what has happened in families and in communities.
Hello, my name is Lily Hart, and I'm from North Little Rock, Arkansas. I am here today to talk about how much getting off assistance and getting a job meant to me and my children's, and how proud I am of my family, what my family has accomplished. In 1981, after being laid off my job, I spent 2 years on assistance. I had 3 children and had to take care of them with $282 a month. It was my son, Carlton, who really pushed me to get back to work. I enrolled in Project Success, one Governor Clinton welfare reform programs in Arkansas. The program taught me how to present myself to get a job I wanted. 2 months later, after training, I got my first job interview. I've been working ever since. At my first job, I was head kitchen cook, went from there to manager. Going to work gave me independence to take good care of my children, to make sure there was always food on the table and a roof over their heads. Having a job gave me a chance to get involved in school and focus on a good education.
In 1992, 1993, they were earning degrees. They were entering into corporate America. They were being employed. They were being incorporated.
When you hear the story of Lily Hardin, you can understand why there's this mantra of strong, independent, don't need no man. This is a woman that was down on her luck. She didn't mention a husband. She did mention 3 children, and being discouraged, there was a jobs program waiting to not just get her into some interviews, but have her feeling better about herself. And once she got employed in 2 months, she was up to head chef. And then she spoke of further education. All resources waiting at the behest of the state to help this single mother of 3 get back on her feet. No mention of a man. Well, she did mention a man that came to her rescue, actually.
And I want to introduce to everyone, I first met 10 years ago, the man who started my success and beginning of my children's future, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
They were being employed. They were being incorporated. How can you say all this stuff about patriarchy and oppression if you have an upwardly mobile, college degree class of black women who are visible in American life? They've been incorporated, and they're being incorporated. And they're valuable to institutions. Institutions want them. What black man is holding them back?
Now, what did the bill do? Just like a lot of political compromises, there was the good and there was the bad. For example, the bill eliminated 19 types of semi-automatic assault weapons. It also provided huge amounts of funding to hire cops. 100,000 cops were funded. It was about $14 million at the time for community policing. The bill also enacted the Violence Against Women Act that provided funding to protect women and victims of domestic violence and crimes against women. But the most pernicious provision of the 1994 crime bill was its $12 billion that was authorized for states across the country that would enact what's called truth in sentencing laws. That funding literally paid states to increase the number of prison beds that they allocated for individuals convicted of violent crime in this country to serve 85% of their sentences behind bars. The reason that provision is so important, and the reason we're still talking about it today, is the federal government essentially subsidized states across the country to build more prisons.
Like I'm reading this through from the LA Times. This review, it says, the most intriguing aspect of Boomerang turns out not its story, but its racial composition. It says, this takes pains to create a reverse world from which white people are invisible. Now,
oh yeah, this cat in the LA Times was tripping because there were no, there were white people in the movie, but there were no white leads in it. And you take a picture like Boys in the Hood. No one tripped about that because it was, a movie that dealt with like a violent thing, but regular thing, and it was business. So where are the white people? Who's running that office?
And the answer to who was running that office was the strong, independent CEO, Jacqueline Breuer, played by Robin Givens. The powerful woman that didn't need a man, she just wanted a man. She wanted to play with Marcus, date Marcus the way that powerful men dated pretty, young, beautiful women. Hence the name Boomerang. Of course, Robin Givens was the perfect representation of the black woman power boss, graduating from Head of the Class fame, a show heralded for pioneering diversity. Who better to represent the upward mobility of black women when they were unimpeded by black men?
It's 1992, 93, and at that time, Bill Clinton is press second, he in his first term of the presidency, you understand? And And it's like Boomerang comes out. Boomerang, the movie Boomerang came out what, 1991 or 92? I think Boomerang comes out 91 or 92. What is Boomerang about? Reginald Hudlin is behind Boomerang. Boomerang is about the professional black woman. And at that time, this is our generation. All the writers are talking about buppies. They're talking about, upperly mobile black professionals, puppies. And most of the upperly mobile black professionals at that time are who? Women, black women. So where is all this patriarchy that y'all talking about? Where is it?
Salute to Dr. Ronald, Neal, and Big Discussion 76 for having this conversation. There was actually a joking point in the broadcast where they mentioned that I know some of you guys are going to use this material, and absolutely, yes, we are, Doctor. But that said, hearing Dr. Ronald Neal speak about the 90s, in that decade where there was a crime bill on one side for black men, and on the other side there was a welfare to work program which was aimed to get young women and their children off of welfare, but it also offered a way for them to move up in class. It showed that we were living in two different Americas. And then when the movie Boomerang comes out, it is just a representation of that upward mobile black woman professional, and essentially how she could move like a man in that environment, and black men had to find a place to, if not fit in, just play by rules that were governed by someone that wasn't black men. And then globalization came along to boot. It was just not a good decade for black men.
And at the same time that he's writing, you've got William Julius Wilson. Some years before Rituals of Blood comes out, Julius Wilson comes out with When Work Disappears, and that comes out during the Clinton era. That comes out, When Work Disappeared comes out around 1996 or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's like globalization has destroyed everything. And guess who were the biggest losers in terms of globalization? Black men.
I implore you, if you have time, to go and listen to this conversation in its entirety. You'll end up more educated and more fulfilled because of it, because it's going to just enrich your life. But that said, the point that Dr. Ronald Neal is making, here's a very simple one. There was no point in time in America where black men enjoyed unimpeded black male patriarchy over black women. It just never has happened. You could look at the cover of Head of the Class and see two black women and no black men and understand that there have always been outside forces affecting the dynamic between black men and black women. And regardless of the string of 1990s talk shows, speaking of how black men weren't up to snuff and how black women were just doing everything amazingly, there's just evidence that that's a narrative that's written by people that were not in the black community, and that being the case, it's always had an effect on how we have related to each other.
I'm talking about Orlando Patterson. He was like, the sociologists were of his era, his generation. They were basically bullied into silence because the black women were so loud. The feminists, they were like, you jokers, you better not talk about what you perceive as our advantages. You better not talk about the black family. You better not talk negatively about us. The black woman basically bullied sociologists into not writing and publishing stuff that made black women look advantaged or made them look like they were complicit in stuff. And they stayed away from that. And when you look at the sociology, you had to talk about how disadvantaged the women were, and ain't no men around, and they need welfare and all that kind of stuff, or they need all these support systems and blah, 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 blah. And the men are just decimated. They're just gone, completely obsolete. And again, a lot of there were some Black Americans who didn't like the Black Americans with the matriarchal mindset. I'm going to put it, we call it matriarch. We're going to call them now. So this is 2026. Yes, we are effectively products of a matriarchy. And Black men, I'm going to say this, and it's just my perspective, most Black men are matriarchal in their orientation. The vast majority of Black men.
Dr. Neal said it later in this broadcast, and I second it. He enjoys the fact that now we're in a time where all the walls are coming down, and that same woman that was hugging President Clinton is now figuring out how life is for regular Black men who at the same time were getting thrown in jail at a rate that America had never seen before. It's a really unfortunate reality of many Black men that no one really cares about our actual story, and that many scary, super predative narratives have always been written about us that everyone has believed. And now, in a time in 2026, it looks like the boomerang has boomeranged. And now, instead of Black men being the super predator demon men that can't get anything right, now we're the men who are getting passports, men who are dating other young ladies, men who are choosing not to date at all. And we are not what's wrong with everyone and everything in America. We're just innocent bystanders now. And now people can see a different truth, a truth that doesn't pin all of the blame on Black men. One where essentially one half of our community was getting grace from the society, at least as much grace as can be expected from this class of people that America has traditionally owned and sold as property. But that other class, that other side, Black men, there's no grace for Black men in America. And now in a time where America is not the America that it used to be and can't do the things that it used to do for the women that are looking for that American dream with help from Big Daddy government or the man that he represents, Black men are standing on the sidelines saying, I don't really care what happens, because when it was time for people to look out for Black men, no one really spoke up for us besides ourselves. This is a new age and a new time where Black male independence is here. Like it or not, passports, dating out or not dating, Black men are speaking with their own voice for the world to hear. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below. Catch the next video. Take care.